It is not true that rocky planets always form close in and gas giants always form farther out. It's a rule that feels almost inevitable. Near the star it's too hot, light gases escape, and rock remains. Farther away it's cold, there's ice and abundant material, and so a core can grow until it captures a massive atmosphere. The mind loves this simple geometry, because it turns a chaos of dust and vortices into a clean map. Small and dense inside, large and bloated outside. Then a distant planetary system appears, and the map stops working. Not because of a minor detail, but because of a reversal that feels unsettling. A hot giant, enormous, where there shouldn't be the space or the time to build it. And farther out, on comfortable, temperate orbits, rocky worlds or mini Neptunes arranged as if someone had shuffled the deck. That's where the common rule becomes unstable, because in truth it isn't a law of physics. It's a snapshot of our particular history. The word that changes everything is memory. A planetary system is not a still image of birth. It is the result of a long sequence of displacements, collisions, gas loss, and resonances that lock and then break. Formation is not a moment in time, it's a film. And when we observe a distant system, we see the final frame, without the deleted scenes. The audience thinks, position equals origin. But often, position simply means where a planet managed to survive. At the beginning there is a disk, a thin expanse of gas and dust rotating around a young star. The word, dust, is misleading, because it's not harmless grime. These are solids that must grow quickly, while the gas that surrounds them disappears within a few million years. Those grains collide, stick together, become pebbles, then boulders, then embryos. But this growth does not happen the same way everywhere. Within the disk there are special regions, pressure traps, rings and gaps, thermal boundaries. One of these boundaries is the snowline, the frontier where water shifts from vapor to ice and, suddenly, the amount of available solid material increases. It's a natural accelerator. Beyond that boundary, cores grow faster. So far, the classical rule still seems intact. Ice outside, rock inside. But the disk is not an immobile carpet. The gas exerts a force that slows, drags, and can cause planets to migrate. An embryo does not feel the emptiness of space, it feels a current. Giants in particular, once they become massive enough to carve a gap in the disk, can be pulled inward as if locked into a gear. It's not free fall, it's drift. If that drift continues, a planet born far away can end up within a few hundredths of an astronomical unit from the star, where the very idea of formation becomes misleading. It wasn't born there. It arrived there. And so the wrong system begins to make sense. A hot giant very close in is not a monster that appeared out of nowhere. It is often the proof that the disk had the time and the mass to build a large core beyond the snowline, and then dynamics did the rest. But the unsettling part is not just the giant inside. It's what remains outside. Because when a giant migrates inward, it doesn't pass through an empty corridor. It crosses the region where other planets were trying to form. How can an enormous planet cross that territory without destroying everything? This is where the story stops being linear. There are at least two ways the film can continue. In the first, the giant cuts through like a blade, destabilizes orbits, triggers collisions, and leaves debris behind. In that case, after migration, the inner region may be repopulated by leftover material that reassembles, or it may remain surprisingly depleted. In the second, more subtle scenario, the giant does not devastate, it pushes. As it migrates, it can trap embryos in resonance, dragging them along like carriages attached to a train. Some end up too close to the star and are swallowed or evaporated. Others pile up, grow, and when the gas disk dissipates, the resonant chain breaks and the planets redistribute. The final result can be paradoxical. a hot giant inside, and beyond it a series of rocky worlds more massive than expected, because they were compressed and fed during an era of migration. At this point, the rule, rocky inside, giants outside, is no longer a rule, it's just one of the possible endings. And the most important thing is that two systems can begin with nearly identical conditions and end up with opposite architectures due to tiny differences, such as the viscosity of the gas in the disk, the rate at which the disk evaporates, or the exact moment when a core crosses a critical threshold and begins to capture gas. It seems like a detail, but it's a switch. If a core reaches that threshold while gas is still abundant, it becomes a giant. If it arrives too late, it remains a super-Earth or a mini-Neptune. And if it migrates in the meantime, its final position tells you more about the disk's timeline than its birthplace. Now add another constraint the public often underestimates. The star itself is not a constant beacon. When young, it is violent. It emits intense radiation, stellar winds, and can strip away the atmospheres of nearby planets. A world that today appears rocky and dense might be the naked core of a planet that once had a gaseous envelope. It wasn't born rocky, it was peeled. This means that even the composition we observe is an outcome, not an origin. A system may appear orderly and classical, simply because time has erased the evidence of its chaotic youth. And in a system that doesn't follow the pattern, that evidence is still there. But deciphering it requires a different question. What processes can invert the distribution without violating physics? The answer is that nothing needs to be violated. You only need to accept that disk physics does not build planets like houses on fixed plots. It builds them like boats in a river. And sometimes the river changes direction, narrows, or creates vortices that trap material. It is within these vortices that another twist can occur, the rapid growth of cores through pebble accretion. If a core in a favorable region of the disk begins to capture pebbles efficiently, it can grow much faster than it would through random collisions of planetesimals. This accelerates the emergence of large cores and makes the formation of giants more likely even in short-lived disks. But it also accelerates competition. A core that grows too early can act as a barrier, intercept the flow of solids, and starve inner or outer regions. A single winner can reshape the entire system. And when that winner migrates, it is not just a planet that moves. It is a tap that opens and closes for everyone else. If a distant system shows a giant close in and smaller planets farther out, it may have lived through precisely this sequence. A core beyond the snowline grows rapidly, becomes a giant, cuts off the pebble flow, and migrates inward. Meanwhile, beyond its original orbit, embryos remain that received material intermittently, and end up growing under a different regime, drier, slower, with mixed compositions. The audience sees the result and thinks of an exception. In reality, it may be a common variant, just harder to observe. And there is one last mental trap. Our solar system has been used as a model, but it may be a relatively quiet case. Not devoid of migration, but stable enough to leave a readable pattern. The problem is that when you turn an example into a rule, every different system looks like a violation. Instead, it is a reminder. Nature does not promise symmetry. It only promises that energy dissipates, and that the final orbit is the one that survived all previous instabilities. When we see rocky worlds not on the inside but farther out, and giants very close to the star, we are looking at a chronicle of planetary natural selection. The close-in giant survived because its mass made it hard to eject and because its migration stopped before it collided with the star. The outer rocky worlds survived because they were far enough away not to be swept up, or because they formed later, when the track was clear. Sometimes they survive because they formed in a safe zone, created by the giant itself, a point where the forces of the disk and resonances make the accumulation of material more likely. What looks like a design flaw may be the opposite, a dynamic design that creates niches, and then lets gravity decide who fills them. This is where the narrative becomes more precise and more unsettling. The classical rule does not fail because it was wrong. It fails because it was incomplete. Inside and outside are not labels of birth. They are coordinates in a field of forces that changes over time. If you truly want to understand that distant system that doesn't follow the pattern, you must ask not where the planets formed, but when. When a core reached critical mass. When the disk began to dissipate. When the star began to strip atmospheres. When resonances locked in, and when they broke. And above all, which single event nudged the system away from the most obvious trajectory. Because a system that looks inverted might be the result of a scattering episode, a phase in which multiple giants form and then perturb one another until some are ejected, leaving one behind on a tight, eccentric orbit that gradually circularizes. In that case, the hot giant is a survivor, not a gentle migrant. Or it might be the outcome of high-inclination migration, driven by distant companions, in which a planet is pushed onto an inclined orbit and then damped by tides until it becomes a hot giant. In both scenarios, the inner region may have been cleared and then rebuilt, or left empty. And if instead you find small planets inside alongside the hot giant, then the story must be even finer. Either those planets formed later, or they were protected by resonances, or they are stripped cores that withstood the heat. The detail that breaks the illusion of the pattern is that our idea of inside and outside is too geometric and not thermal enough. Inside does not just mean closer. It means a regime of temperature, pressure, and radiation that changes as the star evolves. The snowline is not fixed, it moves. Pressure traps are not fixed, they form and dissolve. Even the distance at which a planet can retain an atmosphere is not fixed. It depends on the planet's mass and the star's activity. So a planet that is inside today may once have been outside with respect to the most important physical boundaries of its time. And a planet that is outside today may have formed in a region that was once hotter, drier, and poorer in ices than we imagine. To make this idea concrete, just follow the path of a single grain. In the disk, the gas rotates slightly slower than Keplerian orbital speed because it is supported by pressure. The grain, however, tends to move faster. This creates a headwind that robs it of energy and causes it to spiral inward. It is a continuous loss. If no traps existed, all solids would fall toward the star before becoming planets. The very fact that planets exist implies that the disk creates accumulation points, and those points can lie where you least expect. If a trap forms close to the star, it can concentrate solids and allow the growth of inner super-Earths. If a forming giant creates a barrier, it can cause material to pile up just outside its orbit, efficiently generating outer planets. The pattern you observe is the sum of these traffic jams. It is not a zoning law. It is traffic. And when we talk about a system that breaks the popular rule, we are in fact looking at a case where the traffic has been extraordinarily visible. A giant too close in is a clue of a preferential migration lane. Smaller planets farther out are clues of congestion and restart phases, of moments when material accumulated and then flowed again. The composition of planets, if we know it, becomes a chemical signature of the journey. More water and volatiles suggest formation beyond the snowline or the transport of icy material. Fewer volatiles and higher density suggest stripping and atmospheric loss. Even inclinations and eccentricities are words in this language. Well-aligned, nearly circular orbits suggest migration within the disk. Inclined or eccentric orbits suggest violent encounters and tidal effects. At this point, the rule the public believes to be established gives way in a precise, almost inevitable way. Not because it has been proven that anything can happen, but because the simple explanation had hidden a fundamental variable: motion. The moment you accept that planets migrate, that stars strip, that disks have structure, and that resonances can drag entire groups, the idea of a universal pattern becomes too rigid. And then the most interesting question is no longer, why is this system anomalous, but, what minimally different sequence of events produced such a different ending? It is a question that refuses labels. It forces you to build testable scenarios. If the hot giant arrived early, then we expect the inner region to have suffered strong material loss, and any small planets present to have high densities or to be stripped cores. If instead the giant arrived late, after the inner planets had formed, then we expect broken resonances, slightly excited orbits, and perhaps a population of small planets that survived but were compressed. If the scenario is scattering, inclinations may be high and there may exist a distant companion or an ejected planet we will never see, but whose absence is already part of the story. If it is disk migration, alignment with the stellar axis should be more orderly. Every observable detail becomes a choice among alternative films. And in that choice lies the real twist. What looks like an exception, a system off pattern, may be a lesson in how easily we turn a universe of possibilities into a single reassuring rule. Planet formation is not a manual. It is a competitive process that rewards timing and the relative position of physical boundaries, boundaries that move. The classical pattern is a case in which those boundaries remained in a stable order long enough. The distant, inverted system is a case in which that order changed at the wrong moment, or in the wrong way, or simply in the real way. And so, when you tell it, the tension does not come from the fact that the rule has been broken. It comes from the realization that the rule was never a rule. It was a habit of mind. The architecture of a planetary system is a sentence written with the grammar of gravity and thermodynamics, but with the intonation of chance. The audience believes it knows the grammar. You make it hear the intonation. And at that point, the idea, rocky inside, giants outside, does not die. It transforms. It becomes a more dangerous and more truthful question. What story must a system have lived through for it to appear today either so orderly, or so scandalously overturned? If you've made it this far, it means you value curiosity as much as we do. If you enjoyed this journey, leave a like, write a comment, and subscribe to the channel. It's the best way to support what we do. Your presence truly makes a difference. Until the next exploration.